Hello, I'm Chris Reeve, the Digital Content Manager at Digital Boss, and welcome to the 10th episode of Social Sessions. Today, we've brought out the big guns for the 10th episode. We're here with International Marketing Translation Extraordinaire, Chief Executive of Integro Languages Group, Tom Bool. We're here at the beautiful number 8. Come and follow me in. This is going to be a good one. So I'm here with Tom today. Tom, first of all, thank you so much for coming on Social Sessions. Really appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind, can you just give a short introduction into who you are and also your business?
Yeah, great. So my name's Tom. I'm the CEO of the Integro Languages Group. And the primary business within that is Integro, which is a marketing translation specialist for internationally growing brands.
Boom. What an intro. Now, that sounds absolutely fascinating. Can you break that down further? Like, that sounds like, Elliot, our cameraman here, said you're an international man of mystery. Can you break it down a little bit further?
So how do I break that down? We all know what translation is, and originally that's where we started out. So the translation industry is really complex place, and there's millions of businesses that use it every day. Where we really have our strength, and we learned over time that our niche is brands who really value the strength and message of their brand. And as we say, they want their brand in safe hands as they're growing internationally. It's actually a very hard thing to do, or to at least do right. To grow internationally is a big challenge. It's full of risk.
It's fairly big.
Well, it's sizable, I suppose. It's full of risk, it's full of challenges, and it's full of complexity and potentially very costly. So we're here to help people kind of grab the bull by the horns, but do it in the right way, avoid some of the early mistakes that can be made, really get their ducks all nicely lined up in a row and do it properly.
Second question, What are the biggest mistakes that businesses make when launching their product in another country for the first time?
God blimey, right, where to start? So, amazingly, and probably unsurprising, I'm going to say this, one of the biggest mistakes is just not translating it. So, interesting situation. We talk to lots and lots of companies who say, oh, we sell in Germany. Great, do you translate stuff? No, we don't translate for Germany. Well, why don't you translate for Germany? Well, we don't sell that much. Well, maybe that's why. So the first thing is, if you've got a language barrier, actually acknowledge it and get on with it and do the right translation. Secondly, the assumption is that things work there in a similar way to here. So particularly the further you're going afield, we have lots of clients who they might be interested in China or Japan, for example. And there's an assumption that their domestic business model is roughly, if you just sort the language out, going to fit in to this new market. And very frequently it actually doesn't. The USP that you're offering either just doesn't stand up and doesn't have value in that target market, or it's not unique. So it's just an SP because other people are doing what you're doing already. So you really need to dig into these things first. And then the last thing is just a supposition that your brand and your terms will work in that country. So even just from here to Spain, for example, you might find that either the words that you use commonly to describe whatever the name of your product is or your brand term that you want to keep the same if you possibly can, may already have associations. It might be the same as the name of a TV channel. It might be something that has a funny connotation. It might be related to a political group in that country. And you really need to dig deep, actually, to be really sure that the central words you want to use are safe and will get you where you want to get.
Tom, how can UK-based businesses is it possible to simply make the transition from selling in the UK to, say, Russia or India? I struggle translating from Norfolk, for example, to London. Yeah. So how on earth do you manage it to Russia, for example?
If you mean simply, no. To be honest, I don't think it's something that you should expect to be simple. It is fraught with risk. They're running a different language. India's running a huge number of different languages, and they run a very different legal system to here. But if you really want to do it in the easiest way possible, you've got to work with someone who really knows what they're doing. So you've got to find someone who's got some experience of having done it before. That's going to take months, years off your whole learning process to get in front of it. Use a great translation company, always a good start.
Hey.
But don't really expect it to be simple because it isn't an easy process. And if you actually go into it not taking it seriously and not appreciating your risks and appreciating the work and commitment that it takes to really grow a business in a new country, if you consider you wouldn't start a brand new business expecting to find the simple way to do it. You shouldn't really when it comes to migrating your business to another country.
Put a situation in the room. So I'm Chris Reeve and I'm launching a new brand of shirts. They're a bit dodgy. No. I'm launching a new brand of shirts and I want to try and market them to people in Russia because I feel like more people in Russia will buy them. I guess in a way, this is a good way to talk about how would I set myself up with working with Integro?
Okay, great. So you have a product already.
Yeah.
It's already successful and you know how to sell it.
It's successful-ish.
Well, let's assume it is, because if it's not successful, you should be concentrating on what you're doing here and not growing abroad to start with, so don't talk to me. But let's assume that you're quite good at selling shirts now and you're doing okay. So how are you achieving that? Are you doing it socially? Do you have a load of people going around and selling through distributors in shops? You don't need to answer this question necessarily, but put yourself... Okay, go on.
Let's answer it. So I'm currently selling my shirts with a local independent retailer, and I'm using traditional methods like I'm working with the local press. I'm dabbling in a bit of social media.
So quite hard to scale internationally immediately. So you've got to have a physical infrastructure. Presumably you're delivering shirts physically to shops and you're creating actual physical human relationships with distributors. So that's quite difficult to scale internationally. We would need to see, is that the right model for you to aim at China or Russia? If you want to do it that way, then we would help you discover how people like to buy shirts in Russia. What sizes are they made in? Because they may not be the same size ratios as we have here. You'd have to do your own kind of look into what's the legal framework for selling shirts in Russia. And then we would help you find some distributors that might be sensible or sensitive to hearing what you offer. That's a big, big job. So for you, you're looking at basically completely starting a new business in Russia. It would have been much better if you'd said to me, actually, I do most of this online. I do it through e-commerce or I do it through virtual relationships because that's so much easier to take abroad.
Is that your perfect client? Online? Do they have to be online to work with you, would you say?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. So many of our clients are international manufacturers, or they start out as manufacturers and with our help become international manufacturers. So they're shipping physical products, but that takes a certain size of business. If you're starting out from scratch and you're selling through 3 or 4 local retailers, you need to concentrate on owning the UK first, to be completely honest. However, if you're online, nothing's to stop you opening up an Amazon store anywhere you want, for example. And we can help you do that really, really easily, or Amazon can do that for you nice and easily. Any website that you have, easy access initially, assuming you've got your keyword research done right and you know how people in your target country search. So immediately, if you're talking about Russia, forget Google. It's no use. You've got Yandex, and you've got totally different paths to clients through social media within Russia as well. So it's a great example. So Russia's actually quite complex. With us, we would help you understand who those people are, who's buying shirts in Russia and why, what do they like, because the fashions and tendencies are going to be totally different there to what they are here, and does your product even fit there? And we won't spend any money in Russia until you've got some of those questions answered.
It must be so fascinating. I mean, what if, say, for example, my shirt brand has got 100,000 likes on Facebook, but they're all UK based? Do you then have to shock people and say, sorry, buddy, but Facebook's not really valued as much in Russia? Do you have to be straight with people in that respect? Do you have to build social platforms in another direction for people?
So as a company, we don't build the social network, but we can help them to understand how to restructure that social network. So yeah, if it's the case that they've chosen a method, if you're all over Facebook, but you want to grow in China, it's not going to work for you. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry, and I can't take that away as much as I'd love to. So yeah, you've just got to face the facts. Either China's not the right place for you, or you've got to look at a new model for reaching people.
Tom, something that I've been dying to ask you since setting up this interview with you is, talk to me about one of the biggest translation howlers that you've ever come across.
Oh gosh, right. So you mean like massive mistakes or blunders or whatever? So there's a whole load of really, really famous ones that we've all kind of heard of probably. But the biggest one that always comes to mind for me, Coca-Cola, years and years ago, translated one of their strap lines into something that roughly meant, it's translated into Chinese, into something that roughly meant bite the wax tadpole. Yeah, right.
Fairly big company to be making that mistake.
Yeah, to say the least, yeah. But actually, when it comes to translation mistakes, the famous ones aren't the ones that matter. In a sense, those companies can afford to get over it. They're the big names, and the reason they become famous is because they are big names. The problem is that the majority of translation mistakes remain invisible. So if you translate a website and you're trying to sell your products in France and your translations aren't up to scratch, they might be correct, they might be accurate, they might be acceptable, but they're not up to scratch, they don't convince, they don't sell, your products will remain on the shelves, your website won't take off, and you will fail. And no one's going to ring you to tell you. No one's going to get in touch and say, by the way, the French on your website isn't great. You're not going to get social memes that point this out to you. No one's going to joke about it. You will just fail silently, and you won't understand why. So that's probably the biggest translation mistake you can make.
What I'm fascinated to understand as well is in terms of the, by the way, Google Translate, thoughts?
Oh, gosh.
I mean, and the reason why I put the mic under you straight away is, I mean, I've come across a few occasions where people have gone, well, hang on a minute, Chris, can't I just put it all in Google Translate and then it'll spit it all out of me and I'll publish it and my website will be in French and happy days. Is that a thing?
It's not a thing because it doesn't really work. So Google Translate's got purposes. It's got great uses. If you've got something that's not in your language and you want to get a gist of what it says, it'll probably get you there. If you actually dig deep into the way that Google Translate is filled with translation content, it's not a translation engine. It looks at what's available on the internet in French, it looks at what's available on the internet in English, and it matches them up. It's not really a learning engine much beyond that, and it tries to pull the closest possible meaning that it can find from what's available on the internet, which creates several problems because it's fed by a huge amount of global content that's non-audited and not controlled.
This explains why I failed my French lessons. Oh, God.
So there's no real quality control that goes into it, and what you get is buyer beware, essentially, because you've paid nothing for it, and that's about what you deserve for using it. So it's good, it's useful. Do not translate marketing content with it because you will damage and destroy your brand. End of.
Tom, this is a perfect opportunity to, I guess, plug Integro. If I go in terms of timescales, does it completely depend on the project? I mean, I look at this and I go, I don't even know where to start. But I mean, if I want to work with Integro, how can we make it happen? What are the timescales with that?
It does depend slightly on how far along you are in your journey. So actually, how successful and tidy you've got things in the UK. We would run an onboarding session with you, so we would understand exactly where you are, how you're selling and what's making you money here, and then we would look at where do you want to go and how can we replicate that success for you somewhere else. Assuming you've got a reasonably tidy product, if you're making shirts, if we go back to your example, that's quite simple. You can ship shirts from the UK,
that was close.
Yeah, directly from the UK over to any of at least the friendly kind of local European markets. Yeah. That's pretty simple. If you make corrugated iron buildings or something, then we've got a different job on our hands. But theoretically, we go through a really steady onboarding process with you. We help you develop your USP and your marketing target and your key messaging in that language. Run some PPC at a good landing page. You can be up and running in 6 weeks.
Finally, Tom, where on earth can we find you on social media?
Oh, well, that's easy. So on Twitter, @IntegroUK, or on our website, www.integrolanguages.com.
Tom, thank you very much for coming on today. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
That's it for this week, folks. Thank you so much for watching the 10th episode of Social Sessions. Feel free to follow us on social media @TheDigitalBoss, #Social Sessions. If you've got any comments, drop them below, and I'll see you next week.